Danke, Minister Ruprechter. Es ist jetzt auch eingetroffen, habe ich gesehen, der WIFO-Chef, der Professor Badelt. Und Minister Ruprechter hat schon gesagt, es ist eine große Ehre, den Kommissar für Landwirtschaft und ländliche Entwicklung hier bei uns zu haben. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass Sie da sind. Mr. Hogan wird uns jetzt etwas erzählen über die europäische Agrarpolitik und Sie haben vor sich so Kopfhörer liegen, weil es wird simultan übersetzt. Mr. Hogan, the floor is yours.
Minister Ruprechter, MEPs Costinger, Dorfmann, Vice President of the European Parliament, Mrs. McGuinness, farmers, foresters, students, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, here in Vienna, even in the snow. This is my second visit to your country. And Minister Ruprechter kindly invited me to be hosted at the Parliamentary Committee on Agriculture and Forestry, and I'm glad to be back again. I come from a small family farm background in the southeast of Ireland, with some beautiful landscapes that are protected by our farmers, so I feel that Ireland and Austria have a lot in common in that respect. We don't have the snow or the ski slopes or the wine, but we feel we have everything else. I know that Austria is a beautiful country which is renowned for your food, but also your beautiful countryside. Its world-renowned mountains, its lakes and its forests, and indeed your very proud agricultural tradition, where 32% of Austria is agricultural area, while forestry covers 44% of your area. Now, on the subject of forestry, I want to take the opportunity to thank MEP Costinger for her great work that's chairing the Forestry Intergroup in the European Parliament. And I've had the pleasure of addressing a number of seminars and meetings at breakfast and otherwise with MEP Costinger over the last 2 years. I am thankful for the work that's going on there and the importance of this work and importance of forestry for a number of our EU policy goals around biodiversity, the bioeconomy, the circular economy, carbon sinks, and a number of other important environmental targets, and of course providing high-quality jobs and growth in rural areas. So you can see that forestry is not a standalone entity for our farmers. It's very much an integral part of what we have to do in so many other areas apart from forestry in terms of environment, landscape, and all of the issues around climate change and the environment. In Austria, the maintenance of rural jobs and growth is very relevant, given that almost half of your 8.4 million people live in the rural areas. You have a unique farming sector, famous for small-scale holdings in rugged terrain. Indeed, 87% of your farm holdings are located in mountainous regions and areas that face natural or other specific constraints. And of course, you're one of the European Union member states with the highest levels of agricultural area that's dedicated to organic farming, which can be as high as 20%. All these factors require the support system of a smart, sustainable, and flexible common agricultural policy. And I am confident that we are doing some things right, and we can do more. The CAP budget for Austria provides a total of €8.8 billion in EU funds for the period 2014 to 2020, which can be broken down into €4.9 billion to direct payments, which supports farmers and market measures, and €3.9 billion for rural development measures. So it's good to know that Austria, as well as other member states, apply the aid supplement for young farmers for the first 5 years, in addition to the already existing installation aid grants. This is a very positive sign that Austria wants to support a new, innovative generation of young farmers, of men and women, into the agricultural, food and farming sectors. It is a big priority for me, generational renewal. Just last week, I told a meeting of young European farmers in Brussels that we need to do more to promote generational renewal, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of the young farmers in your various organisations over the coming weeks about how I can help. The unique situation of Austria, where 60% of the total land surface is alpine and around 70% of the area is classified as less favoured, will obviously have a clear impact on the design of the rural development policy. You have put a strong emphasis on these measures to preserve the majestic alpine ecosystem and support farmers in areas facing natural constraints. And I strongly support this policy choice. Today's CAP is different to the one in our history books. We now have a market-orientated policy, so the butter mountains and the wine lakes, which you have been familiar with in the past, are gone, and our export subsidies are no longer used. With an ever-increasing world population, of course, food security is at the forefront of our thinking. And I'm also well aware of the growing societal concerns about how our food is produced, and of course I take this very seriously. The CAP provides a vital degree of stability to farm revenues, but it also supports farm businesses to produce top quality food, while respecting the high environmental standards which our consumers expect and demand. The stability that the CAP provides is positive, not just for farmers, but for the whole European Union agri-food sector, which is the largest employer in the European Union. 44 million jobs, directly and indirectly, are associated with agri-food and farming, many of which, and indeed most of which, are located in our rural areas. On-farm investment through rural development programmes has helped to improve the competitiveness of our farmers and the sector's production potential, notably by attracting other public and private investment. The figures for 2007 to 2013 show that €8.7 billion of EU funds was spent supporting the modernisation of 380,000 farms across the European Union, which in turn raised another €25 billion in private investment. So there's a huge leverage effect in financial support from the funds in the Common Agricultural Policy. The improvements that have been achieved through these investments in the farm sector have a positive knock-on effect in the food industry. These figures show how important the CAP is for a viable and sustainable agricultural sector and for the benefit of all of our European citizens. And I'm glad to see that Austrian citizens share this view. We do certain surveys through Eurobarometer, and they generally show that over 2/3 of the Austrians believe that the CAP benefits all sectors and all citizens, and not just farmers. Of course, we have to build on that positivity as enshrined in those surveys. You would think sometimes it was otherwise. So I look forward to visiting some farms this afternoon here in Austria. I expect to see 2 holdings that take full advantage of opportunities for smart business development while contributing to the attractiveness and economic development of the rural areas in which they farm. I am curious to hear how the CAP and the rural development policy can contribute to supporting these farms and other such farms in various sectors of agriculture and food here in Austria in the future. As you can see, the CAP delivers, but we can always do better, and we have to reduce the complexity of our policy. And this is why I am calling for the support of all stakeholders and farmers across Austria and throughout the European Union in beginning to design a blueprint for the future of the CAP. In December, the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, announced a roadmap to begin designing the future CAP, which will culminate with the publication of a Commission communication, which is a policy position of the Commission, by the end of this year. This process will begin with a consultation where you can be involved, and the consultation starts on the 2nd of February, in 3 days' time. And I look forward to hearing from you in relation to what you think we should do differently, or indeed what we should continue to do if you feel that we are doing something right in the context of your submissions to the next CAP. But I want the CAP to remain the strongest ally of Austrian farmers and rural areas. But to protect the budget in the context of Brexit and other issues, to improve its functioning, we need to form a consensus about how the future CAP should look like. President Juncker, who is a strong believer in the CAP, said in December that as a fundamental and indispensable European policy, the CAP must be simplified to ease the administrative burden on farmers and modernised to face the challenges of the 21st century, including our sustainable development objectives. And I believe that there are a small number of key principles that we should prioritise, based on our market experience over the last 2 years and our international commitments which we have signed up to in the last 2 years. The future CAP has to ensure greater market resilience and more income stabilisation tools for sector-specific in every aspect of agriculture. We must implement our international agreements on sustainable development and on climate change, so therefore we need more sustainable agricultural production. We need progress on generational renewal to get young people involved more in agriculture, to prioritise certain programmes for them, to be able to work with all other people on the farm, all other people in the family on the farm, that it is a cooperative and cohesive family effort. We need a simpler and less bureaucratic policy, and I have implemented 240 changes in the last 2 years. We need farmers to get fairness in the food chain, to ensure that vis-à-vis other actors in the food chain, that farmers are treated more fairly than they are now. This issue will be a feature of a policy initiative later this year, in 2017. Of course, we must also be conscious of quality policy. Quality wins out at the end of the day, and European Union agriculture and food is the best address in the world for high-quality food and drink products, and we want to ensure that we continue to keep it that way. As well as this, I know that Austrian farmers and rural citizens will want to see a strong continuation of a smart and strong rural development policy. I fully agree with this principle. Indeed, I have already begun to address it. Last September, the Commission hosted a 2-day conference in my own country of Ireland, in Cork, where over 350 experts across all of the range of rural stakeholders elaborated a declaration on the future of European Union rural development. This document, which I will refer to, is entitled A Better Life for Rural Areas, and it contains 10 points which calls for investment in the potential of our rural areas, not just in terms of jobs and growth, but equally for better integration into other policies. Of course, this rural development policy, or Cork 2, builds on Cork 1, where your own Austrian former Commissioner for Agriculture, Franz Fischler, was able to ensure a successful outcome in Cork 20 years ago. During International Green Week in Berlin, where I was pleased to meet Minister Ruprechter, MEP Kostinger and MEP Dorfmann, I hosted a meeting to begin transforming the Cork 2 declaration into action. We can have all the documents in the world, but sometimes they gather some dust, and therefore we want to ensure that we reflect the concerns that were agreed by all those stakeholders in Cork. We want to reflect them into actions that we can take over the next couple of years. Ladies and gentlemen, the CAP is an economic, environmental and social policy. Our review of our policies must reflect all of these three objectives. I want the CAP to continue to do a good job for Austrian farmers and our rural communities. I look forward to your submissions in the next reform. In 2017, you will get an opportunity to consult through your submissions. I hope you take full advantage of that opportunity. Thank you very much.